Deploying a business process into production requires time and resources, even for relatively simple processes. With Bonita Process Builder, we provide your business teams with a tool that allows them to build simple processes and put them into production within minutes. Let's see how it works. From the Bonita Process Builder homepage, you can view your tasks, the list of available processes, and create new business processes. In our example, we'll create a payment request process. In this first interface, we'll describe our process with information such as the name, version, category, and criticality. You can also use execution-related options, such as automatically canceling the process after a certain time, for example, 90 days after it starts. Next, let's define the list of users involved in our process. As in any Bonita process, you can add users who belong to a group, a role, or a specific membership, for example, the finance director. You can also assign specific users. Now, let's move on to the data sections. These represent the data that can be displayed in the process user interfaces and are grouped by sections. You can define the input data with different types: text field, drop-down list, document upload, etc., and validation rules such as minimum and maximum length for a text field. Of course, you can create as many sections and data points as you need. Now, let's build our different steps. We'll start by adding the payment request step. Let's define the list of users who can perform this step, then select the data sections we want to display. For each piece of data, you can indicate whether it is visible, editable, and required. Next, let's define the action associated with this step, and then validate it. Finally, let's add a manager approval step. This is also a user task, which must be assigned to the requester's manager, the one linked to the previously created step. In the same way, we'll configure the data sections to display and define our action buttons. We can also set a deadline for this task and trigger an alert if the deadline is reached. Let's proceed the same way for the following steps. First, we'll create the financial approval step, dedicated to members of the finance team. Then, we'll create two final steps for the requester, indicating whether the request was approved or rejected. The interfaces presented in these steps won't contain data. Next, let's configure the approval flow. Depending on the requested amount, we'll route the request to the manager or to finance. For amounts under 2,000 euros, manager approval is not required. To do this, we'll select the payment request step and add a conditional redirect. To finish, let's add the rejection redirects. We'll add a redirect on the manager approval step so that if the request is rejected, the process moves to the rejection step. We'll do the same for the finance approval step. Then we'll create a final redirect from the approved payment request step to the end of the process. Our process is now complete. Let's move on to execution. From the homepage, we can view the payment request process in BPMN graphical format. Now let's run the process. With the play button, you can start a new payment request. You can see the data we previously configured. Once all the required data is entered, we can submit the request. The manager approval task appears in the task list. Since the amount is greater than €2,000, manager approval is required. In this demonstration, our user Walter Bates has been configured to handle everything. We can access the task using the corresponding action button. Finally, we can approve or reject the request, with the option to add a comment. The interface also shows the list of the different steps with their related details. We'll do the same with the finance team approval. Once the necessary approvals have been obtained, the approved payment request task appears in the task list. We can access it in order to finalize the request. Let's click on it to complete it. Now, let's look at the tools available to application administrators. A process monitoring screen is provided to review the installed processes and their executions. This makes it easy to see the number of cases that are ongoing, completed, canceled, or in error. By selecting a process, we can access additional details, including a full breakdown of each case. We also have the ability to act on our processes, for example by reassigning a task or even canceling a case.